Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Wrestling Skull podcast, which presents today our Wrestling Arts episode 2 in fact, because last time if you joined us, you would have joined us watching a very old match indeed from, I think it was, 1951, really old match at the time between Lou Thesz and Buddy Rogers. It was a pretty lengthy match as well. I'm your host John Scott. Joining me back for these two classic matches on this episode is my co-host Matt. Matt, how are you doing?
Yeah, doing great, thanks. And this should be an interesting one, I believe, because I've always wanted to see more Dynamite Kid. I've heard so much about the kid. I heard what an amazing guy and wrestler he was. But I feel kind of guilty that I haven't seen enough of it.
Yeah, well, we feature two matches on this episode, and first we're going to get round to having Tiger Mask 2 versus the Dynamite Kid, and it's from 1985. What I'm going to do up on our, when I release the episode, I'm going to be putting links in it, so you guys can follow along on the same video that myself and Matt will be watching at the time. And we're going to have another match as well after this, so like I say, both links are going to be put up so you guys can follow us along on this. Matt, I think we should get straight into it, so I'm going to do the countdown on 1. Everybody join us, hit the play button, and we'll be watching this all together. 3, 2, 1, and here we go. So not as far back as we was last time, Matt. 1985 seems much more modern now, doesn't it, all of a sudden? But we see the Dynamite Kid, who looks extremely chiseled and pretty big, even for a guy of his height. I mean, he was about, 5'8", 5'9", I believe. So he's, you look at his physique there, Matt, he looks pretty bulky for a guy that size.
Yeah, definitely, and yeah, when you're looking at him, you wouldn't even think he's on the shorter side for a wrestler.
No, absolutely not. Tiger Mask 2 then, of course there's been lots of different reincarnations of Tiger Mask. Dynamite Kid did actually wrestle the original Tiger Mask, which is also a very famous match. I think they wrestled each other a few times, also in Madison Square Garden as well, which was a famous bout. But we're getting into this one. Just basically, again, I had a few requests about doing this particular match. I'm not that familiar with it. I think I may have seen this 10 years ago, something like that. But really, I'm not that familiar with it. Matt, I mean, we're back. Lovely stuff there, by the way. We're back at a time now, and we're also in a different culture here in Japanese wrestling. For those listeners who may not be familiar with the Japanese style, there definitely is an art of itself, Matt. I mean, it's totally different from anything else. It's kind of like lucha libre is to Mexico. It's basically its own culture in Japan, and it's I've got to say, of all the cultures, this is probably the one that it's stayed pretty loyal even up till today with how the presentation is in the ring. It's still very familiar, isn't it, Matt?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, I can see straight away that it's not exactly coming out explosive, but you don't want to start the match with a huge bang, do you? You got to slowly build these things up because you don't want to leave yourself with nowhere else to go halfway through the match.
Yeah. I mean, if you watch any kind of New Japan match, like from today or from the past or whatever, you'll notice the style. I mean, it is slower. People talk about the strong style and all the rest of it, but it's a slower pace. But you've got to remember, in Japan, there is still very much, Matt, nice snap suplex. I loved that suplex they used to do there. A lot of force in it. There is still so much, the sort of psychology of it is still there in Japan. It's very much treated as a sport still. So, when we talk about our last match in 1951 and we talk about how much that's evolved in the American culture, this has pretty much stayed true to the foundation of it being a contest, of it being a sport almost, when you watch this, and they pretty much stayed true to that. People, Matt, I mean, how familiar are you with, say, the Tiger Mask sort of cat hole persona in itself?
I'm actually not familiar with Tiger Mask at all, really.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I was quite interested to see how this one pans out, because obviously I've heard of Dynamite Kid, but no, I hadn't really heard of Tiger Mask, so I am quite interested to find out what he's all about.
Sure. Of course, Dynamite Kid, I mean, 1985, so he would have worked briefly. This would have been in between like his Stampede days and sort of like then going into WWF. But back then they used to kind of trade stars a little bit more. They used to have something set with Inoki as well, so a lot of stuff going on. All of a sudden the pace has picked up quite a lot here, as you can see. And I mean, watching this match, Matt, I mean, and we look at the Dynamite Kid, and in a lot of people's minds, Matt, Dynamite Kid is, people say, I mean, Brett's even said it himself, pound for pound, he believed the Dynamite Kid was the greatest wrestler. I mean, one of our own, UK's own, I mean, obviously very proud of that, but I mean, as a performer, his Stampede days especially, he looked very crisp. He was such a smooth operator, the Dynamite Kid. I think it's very rare you would see him do any kind of botch or anything like that. He took it very, very seriously in that ring. As far as people that are maybe familiar just with him in WWF, a guy like him back in the day, it was probably a little bit too early for him to ever get anywhere, because again, it was sort of the time of the Giants, wasn't it, I guess, back then for him in his WWF run?
Yeah, I mean, the other thing I like about him as well is that we had a whole run of a generation of superstars, but you can see where they drew inspiration from, the likes of Dean Malenko, and you got the likes of Benoit and Angle, and and even Bret Hart himself. You can see where they drew inspiration from. Looking at someone like Dynamite Kid, thinking, everything he does, he pulls off to perfection. Why wouldn't you want to emulate that kind of style?
Yeah. A bit of a headbutt going on there. But this match, just watching it at the moment, it's just so crisp. It's just move for move. There's not much they're not going to pull out. Oh man, great little reversal there.
Oh, and that was
like a tombstone.
Tombstone before it was made super famous, eh?
Absolutely. Foot on the rope. Still going on back then. I guess for people who are not familiar with Japan as well, you might be looking at the crowd going, God, they're not entertained. But you've got to understand the Japanese culture is very different to the American fans in the sense that they're very respectful. If they see moves that they like, they'll clap, but it's not the same sort of chanting and things like that you would have got seen in the US, especially around this time. See a huge stretch going on that rope. I remember back in the day trying to get these videos was so difficult. You used to have to really search around to get any material from Japan back in the day when this all happened. So the exposure was very very small back then, even though Dynamite had gone there and done this. But
I mean, I've got to say, I didn't really see any kind of Japanese wrestling until mid to late 2000s. Because
sure.
I was. Like you said, it was incredibly hard to come by. Even on VHS, I don't think I ever saw any. The shells were dominated by WCW and WWF.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, you just wouldn't have got that over here. There's no way they probably would have ever converted videos to sell or anything like that. It just wasn't seen as anything. As you can see, the pace is slightly quickened up. But as well, it's worth pointing out, a lot of guys back in the day used to just treat Japan like another territory. They just used to go there for a certain period, get a little bit of exposure. It used to be another place to go and learn your craft, basically, and then you'd go back to the US better. I mean, that doesn't happen as much now, but I mean, you look at the past few years, Matt, you look at guys like AJ Styles and Gallows even,
Yeah.
DH Smith and all the rest of it. The British Bulldog and all these guys that have taken that step to go to Japan to start their career again almost. So it's still widely available.
I've got a huge those kind of players because to uproot your life for the sole purpose of making your career better, honing your own craft and improving your listening abilities, just to change every aspect of your life like that, it takes a lot of commitment, and you can tell that the people who go out there and do that, they are going to come back because they've got that kind of dedication to improve.
Sure. And Japan is no joke either. I mean, if you're a wrestler in Japan, a young wrestler, you have to go through the dojo. You have to go through a certain amount of respect of just every day. It's really a lot of commitment to want to be a wrestler in Japan. Like they train you so hard. It's so different, I suppose, to anything we're used to seeing when we see wrestlers in the US or the UK even. You see how they start. It's a total different thing. Matt, what do you make of the match so far? That because we're nearing the end, I'm guessing somewhere around that. What have you made of it?
Yeah, I think it's pretty decent. I mean, it holds up to anything these days, kind of. I mean, of course, back then, like we were saying, it is a slower pace. And they're not gonna expose themselves too much, using up too much energy. But they've definitely been working at a solid kind of style. As you can see, like Dynamite Kid, they're bleeding from the nose. I mean, they're not just taking it easy on each other. It is definitely a physical kind of feel to the match.
Yeah, he has taken that blow, hasn't he? And now back in the day, this would have been seen as even then somewhat of a slight dream match because of the fact that Dynamite Kid had spent years over in Japan before this, so he'd probably, in a lot of ways, Matt, he had a better reputation in Japan than he did the US market at this time. As considered as a sort of legit wrestler that you could get over. His credibility would have been pretty up there compared to the WWF run that he would eventually have. But something about this match that I've really noticed, I've rarely seen, especially in the Japanese style, is that they have used the outside quite a lot, which is very unfamiliar grounds to a lot of these matches.
Especially in this kind of time, like mid-80s, you didn't really see a whole lot of that. Like I say, I confess, I haven't seen that much of Japanese wrestling from this kind of time zone, but it didn't seem to be happening that much in America.
No, absolutely. The Tiger Mask. The Tiger Mask gimmick itself, Matt. It's a strange thing, I guess. Like for us to look at it, and get, I suppose, what it's all about. You look at it, you're thinking, what the hell?
Very literal, isn't it?
Yeah. I take it you're where I am, Matt, nearly at the end now.
Yeah.
And this would get called off. I want to thank. Let me see where this match comes from. This is one of our fans who come in. I will give you a mention. Matt from another Matt. Matt from Glasgow, Scotland. So thank you, Matt, for bringing that in. It was an interesting to go back to and check out that match because. It wasn't sort of like your 5-star classic match, but the matches we cover on this, they're going to be they're not always going to be, outstandingly amazing like that Lou Thez one that we saw last time. But what we're basically trying to create here is different cultures, different wrestling from the past. That's what we're trying to do. But those two guys in particular are so well renowned. And I've got to say, the beginning of that match, I really enjoyed it. Even though it was slow, just the moves that they were doing, there wasn't too much punches at the beginning. I liked how, again, similar to the other classical match we saw, that formula of just you go with the punches more towards the end of the match because otherwise you give